Good evening, everybody. Welcome back to Into the Veil. I'm your host, Rachel, and thank you again for being here with us. Please take a moment before we begin to subscribe and ring the notification bell so you will be updated on our future videos. In our last installment of this short series, we took a look at some basic behavioral patterns that you might encounter if you ever had an interaction with Bigfoot or the Sasquatch people. And you will hear me refer to them as both. They prefer to be called the people, but most people understand our terminology. If you haven't had a chance to view that original video, please watch it as well, because it will help you in understanding the broader picture of their behaviors and what you might possibly experience while out in the forest. There will be a link to that video in the description box here to help you find it. So let's proceed. As we discussed in the previous video, we simplified Sasquatch, Bigfoot, general behavior into three basic types: the evolved Sasquatch, the wounded Sasquatch, and what we call the challenged Sasquatch, which may include abnormalities due to environmental issues or even genetic birth defects. Today, however, we are going to delve a little deeper into what most people consider the woo factor. It dives into the strange, the supernatural, or the paranormal side of these encounters. Supernatural and paranormal basically is referring to anything that is outside the realm of what we know, outside of normal behavior that applies to nearly every other basic type of person or animal in our known world. Regardless as to what your personal position is about this subject, very few that have had first-hand encounters or experiences will argue against the fact that something very strange and otherworldly occurs quite often when the Sasquatch is around. It goes far beyond reasonable and logical explanation, and witnesses are often left scratching their heads with a sense of bewilderment. So let's start with something everyone is familiar with. Very frequently, it's finding misplaced footprints and disappearing trackways. We probably couldn't count the vast number of eyewitness accounts, photos, videos, and reports of footprint trackways that just randomly appear from out of nowhere, just to vanish again in the same strange manner. It might be easily dismissed if this were happening on dry or rocky soil, but this phenomena continually occurs in places such as open fields that are covered in snow, long stretching patches of muddy ground, deep moss-covered forest floors, and so on. Sometimes there may only be 1 or 2 footprints, other times 8 to 10 footprints in a row, and then nothing else. No indication of any other human or animal disturbing the ground anywhere in proximity to where these trackways occur. What's even stranger is when you find the solitary footprint, as if one stepped into the world on one foot, like a spectral being taking form, just to vanish again in the next instant. It definitely opens the questions of where did it come from and where did it go. So let's take a look at another set of phenomena that are often witnessed and reported. Seeing, hearing, or smelling a very physical looking Sasquatch in full body that appears to vanish into thin air or disappear behind a solitary tree and never be seen afterward. We're not talking about the one that disappears over the top of a ridgeline or hides under the cover of thick brush. They may be standing in wide open view in a low area with no obvious escape route, and then poof, gone just like a wisp of smoke. Another example of unexplained activity is when a very rational, sane, and normal person or people hear them speaking or making sounds that indicate the source as being only a few feet or even inches away from them, yet nothing is visible to the human eye. On one hand, you can't deny the physical qualities attributed to Sasquatch from the thousands of physical sightings, finding footprints, handprints, unexplained hair, maybe fecal specimens that perplex analysis, witnesses experiencing the smell, the sounds, and other indicators of a physical something being the cause. Yet we continually experience the other side of this as well. Even with all of our vast and expansive technology in trying to detect them, we still come to the realization that Sasquatch, Bigfoot, only allows you to see what they want to be seen. So the question presents itself. Do we think this falls into the realm of paranormal or supernatural yet? And before we go any further, I would like to say that it is my feeling and understanding that the Sasquatch who fall into what we classify as that third category of being physically, mentally, or genetically challenged lack a huge amount, if not all, of these paranormal abilities. Their energy is of a very basic existence, and they are prone to all of the life hazards that any other creature is apt to deal with on a 3D plane. There may be a one-off situation from time to time, but it is rare. So the people we are speaking of, the beings we are speaking of, are primarily in the first category of the evolved, and then into the second category, where they may display a little lesser of these gifts or attributes, but still have access to them. Those first two types will be the main contributors to these types of reports. There has also been a great conjecture and debate about Sasquatch having some type of alien action, as oftentimes witnesses report seeing strange orbs of light or other possible UFO-type activity before, during, or directly after a Bigfoot encounter. I'm not here to negate the possibility or the potential of other intelligent life existing in the outer regions of our universe. However, I think the focus for the moment should be directed a little more toward the inner dimensions instead of our outer dimensions. You've probably heard me mention in prior videos the topic of starseeds, and I've also made reference to different planet or star energy struggling to hold its vibration intact, and that these people have been very connected to that. And you can probably tell by now that this isn't going to be quite the simplified video that the first one was. We're going to try to clarify some of these paranormal abilities, things that are totally befuddling to some and incomprehensible to others. This begins what we consider the all things are possible zone. So this is where I'm going to ask you to hang in there with me, because we are coming out of the woods, so to speak, and we're going to look at something a little bigger. You know, all stories have a beginning, and in this story I'm going to draw some parallels that most of you are familiar with. Maybe it will help in connecting the dots. In the beginning, there was the Word. The Word being frequencies and vibration. The frequencies and vibrations amassed every particle of matter and antimatter into existence. All of these were condensed into the size of a large pea, carrying with it more energy than every nuclear device combined in our known world. everything that is and could be compressed together in this tiny, energized form. The word was spoken, call it frequency released, and let there be light. Regardless of whether you call it the Big Bang or creation, at that moment the matter was released in an explosive fashion, and the process of creating the universe, all things seen and unseen, began. Matter formed into the physical, antimatter formed into the invisible mirror image of the physical. I'm going to say that again. Matter formed into the physical, and antimatter formed into the invisible mirror image of the physical. Yin and yang, dark and light, the eternal balance. But it really didn't stop there. If you can imagine yourself standing between two large mirrors and trying to find an end to the reflections. The reflections continue and are never-ending fractal copies of everything perceived before it. Never-ending, reaching into infinity, like layers of a never-ending onion. Each layer becoming a little less clear than the one before it, creating new realms with subtle differences, one layer after the next. For everything that exists, there is a counter-equal that self-perpetuates the creation of multiple dimensions and multiverses, like cells that multiply in the human body. They all originated from a single cell, but each division has its own intelligence by design that directed all of it toward its purpose. Our 3D world is but one small cell in this infinite and continually expanding multiverse of possibilities. Everything in it is ethereally connected back to a single source. This is more than theory or some kind of sci-fi work if fantasy. Science and quantum physics have already proven the reality of this. This would be the reason that several internationally backed programs with alphabetical abbreviations for names are so busy at work trying to contact parallel universes via frequencies and vibrational disruptions or use of antimatter in our atmosphere. They know that there is much more depth to the inner dimensions than the outer ones. Ancient mystics had the terminology correct when they named the layers between worlds the veil. That's exactly what it is, a thin veil or membrane that separates each one from the next. If there's enough stretch or abrasion against the fabric, it will weaken and allow exchange to occur from each side. And if you just happen to be privy to the right use of vibrations, frequencies, and application of the focused energy at one spot, you will be able to pass back and forth without issue. Even in the Bible, it speaks of Jesus passing through walls or doors without being seen, invisible to the 3D world. Every level, plane, or realm that is in similar harmonic resonance with your own energy can be passed through, like moving through curtains from one room to the next. Imagine yourself as an endless copy, living multiple existences all at the same moment. Each one a little different, or even drastically opposite from the next. Each version slightly altered by the wave of fractal reflection. Really, the possibilities are limitless, and that's exactly the point. Imagine being able to view every possible version of yourself that could ever be. Every version sharing a partial amount of common DNA that was sourced from the beginning, pea-sized mass, and another part of it being altered carbon that wouldn't be recognizable with our tests that we use here. It's classified as no known match. And it gets mind-boggling. So you're saying, I thought we were talking about Sasquatch. Well, yes, we are. So let's get back to them. People continually try to seek out the answers for everything inside of this 3D world that we inhabit. There are numerous clues that allude to answers everywhere, but no direct or definitive answers to any of the great mysteries. We are aware of ancient civilizations that made contact with other realms, amassing great knowledge, and then just disappearing into legends. But no step-by-step instructional manual exists, at least not to the general public's knowledge. And we could go down this rabbit hole for an infinite amount of time. So here's a question. If you had the personal ability to visit other similar worlds that were stable enough vibrationally for you to safely come and go in and out of, wouldn't you be curious enough to explore it? If you could walk through the veil and encounter other variations and types, would you? Some people have a very hard time trying to wrap their brain around the possibility. Our self likes to keep us in a comfortable state of denial, saying to ourselves, we're the only ones, we're all there is. But really, that's the lizard brain operating on its prehistoric instinct of self-preservation. Ego and self-separation from everything else might have been useful in early hunting, gathering, survival mode, but we now know that everything is connected and intertwined, bound together from that single original mass of matter and antimatter. The Word, the light, and the ties that bind on every level that we can possibly exist in run through and connect us all together. Maybe we should entertain the possibility that these people, Sasquatch, Bigfoot, are a variation of a hominid with similarities to us, with their origins of beginning rooted in potentially another dimension or realm. You might ask, why would they choose to visit or hang around here with their knowledge, their abilities, their means of traveling between ethereal borders to any place they desire? One thing to consider in this is that this world, our realm that we live in, offers the greatest version of physical experience, unlike each layer that goes beyond, becoming thinner and weaker as it moves into the next version. The sensation of sight, smell, touch, taste, and hearing, the 5 primary senses that dominate this reality we live in, are unique to this reality we live in. It offers hardcore, irrefutable physical stimulation for everything that's encountered, good, bad, or in between. This level caters to the physical sensations. You may think you know about something by thought, storytelling, or imagination, but until you really experience it firsthand, it's all just a concept. And while I do believe that the evolved beings are here to assist us in more ways than we can imagine, to help us work with the Earth's frequencies, to help us evolve into more and make our own transitions, I think it's important that we first get our minds wrapped around other dimensions, because these are very dimensional beings. And while that lower class may not be able to exercise these same gifts, these same abilities, the majority of them can. And once we can really conceptually understand that and integrate that a little more into our awareness, some of the other may not seem so scary. If you have a gift randomly appear to you, just because you didn't see the being doesn't mean the being wasn't there. So just understand that we're not trying to choke physics down anybody's throat, but it is a necessary part of understanding these people. It is a necessary part of understanding ourselves and how we can relate to them. Just the thoughts for the night. I thank you for being here with us. We will be approaching the spirituality of these people also, as well as some other factors. If you have any questions, as always, please feel free to ask. My email is in the About section, as well as in the description of the video. If you are interested in a personal reading, energy reading for yourself, or in working through some of the experiences you've had, reach out to me. Keep your minds open, keep your hearts open, keep moving forward. We've got this.